Hello, Dan Joss. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great.
You know, this is not an obstacle that I've had to overcome yet, but I understand some people are inheriting IRAs, and that presents them with some new challenges because this is a relatively new thing that's happening.
Death?
Yes. Well, not so much death. I think that's been around for a while. But the inheritance of an IRA, that might seem uncommon to a lot of folks.
It is uncommon, but they're out there.
Okay.
And more recently, the rules have changed about those accounts.
Okay.
So there's that.
Well,
imagine that, a rule change.
Especially with the government.
2019, the Secure Act eliminated the ability of many beneficiaries to take distributions across their own lifetime. So what used to happen is if somebody inherited an IRA, they would make an annual distribution from that IRA every year for the rest of their life. They were allowed to.
Okay.
They could always take out the whole IRA and pay income tax on it. The rules said you at least have to take a little bit out every year for the rest of your life.
Okay.
And of course, there's exceptions to the rule.
Of course.
The new rules state you don't have to take some out every year, but by year 10, the account has to be empty.
Okay. And if it's not empty, then you got to pay tax on it.
50% penalty and tax
That's
from a
sizable.
traditional IRA.
Wow.
So for our clients, we're helping them set up a plan so that by year 10, the account's empty.
Okay.
And of course, there's two types of IRAs, traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs.
Right.
And traditional IRAs are a pot of money that still needs to be taxed. And so if you take some distribution from the traditional IRA, the traditional inherited IRA, that's taxable income.
Right.
And if you let it grow for 10 years, then that may be a rather large distribution. You can see the problem happening. You can see the problem 10 years in advance, right?
Right.
If the $100,000 IRA becomes $300,000 or $400,000 in 10 years, that's a lot of income to have to take in 1 year. So the idea is we should plan for that.
Yep.
And maybe take some out in earlier years or later years, depending. And it depends on the tax bracket you're in. If you're in a high tax bracket, you may wait until you're in a lower tax bracket. Or the opposite, if you're in a low tax bracket, you may hurry up and take it out.
Unless, of course,
depends.
your goal is to pay as much in taxes as you can.
Sure. But then you could wait past the 10 years and pay a 50% penalty, too.
Right. Right.
So
not everybody wants to do that.
So
and the government makes these rules because they want to encourage people to do things.
Right. And that's why the IRA was created. We won't tax you on this money if you save it for your retirement. But now that it becomes an inherited IRA, the original IRA owner has passed away. Now the government says we would like you to empty that account.
Right.
And so it was a little bit of give and take.
Yeah.
You know, you used to have to take some out every year and pay tax. Now they're saying, well, you don't have to, but after a decade, that's long enough.
Right.
And then the other account, the Roth IRA, that's already been taxed, and so it's tax-free to the inherited IRA owner.
Okay.
And so anytime during that 10 years, you can take that money out tax-free. Of course, there's exceptions.
Of course. Of course.
And depending on who inherits the IRA, we've been talking about rules for most people. Well, if you're less than 18 years old, the rules change a little bit. And if you're a spouse of the IRA owner that is now deceased, the rules, you have some more options.
Okay. And what happens if you pass away before the 10 years and it's passed down to somebody else? Does the 10 years reset?
Of course not.
Of course not.
No, the 10 years is started, and the original owner of the IRA is tied to that account.
Okay. So it's from 10 years of their passing.
Correct.
Not the inheritor, the beneficiary.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Roth has a 5-year rule.
Okay.
So the Roth account should be 5 years old before you can start taking those earnings tax-free. So there's some of those little exceptions to all of these little pieces of rules. But the idea is we have rule changes, and we have some planning to do to do it most efficiently for the new owner.
Financial planning, I'll bet.
Right.
Yes. And you're just the guy who can help them with that.
We do this.
Okay. what's the best number for them to call if they need to get in touch with you about some financial planning?
Our phone number is 757-903-2127.
And your website?
JOSSBROWN.com.
JossBrown.com.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for being here, Dan Joss.
Thank you.
Money Talks is a weekly program presented for the listener's benefit and entertainment. It is provided at no cost to the listener, and the ideas, opinions, and comments are not to be construed as legal advice, tax advice, investment advice, or other advice specific to the listener. Listeners are encouraged to seek the advice of a licensed professional or other qualified party when dealing with financial, legal, tax, medical, investment, insurance, taxidermy, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, real estate, chiropractic, veterinary, oral hygiene, hot air ballooning, etc. We have given you some food for thought. Now, call a licensed professional such as Dan Joss at 757-903-2127. Thanks for listening, and remember, failing to plan is planning to fail.